where you get a handful of emails, or in campaigns, you get what they call oppo, and you have to be really careful to go through it and figure out what was the other side of that email and who can you get to talk. Here, we now have hundreds of newly revealed messages these two people exchanged in 2018 and 2019. Now, Bannon has not been accused of any kind of criminal wrongdoing related to Epstein, although he was, as I mentioned, convicted of a different crime and has been basically arrested prior on a whole other issue I'm not going to get into. But no one is saying, to be clear, that he's been accused of an Epstein sex crime. But during a period when Epstein was facing more heat than ever, Bannon got even closer with him. And they hid this potentially embarrassing alliance. That's their view. Epstein lived in a grand townhouse near Central Park. The two men knew Epstein was so politically toxic and embarrassing then that they actually furtively hid Bannon's arrival. Epstein emailing, "I'm in New York tonight through Saturday if you want to visit," under the cover of darkness. Now, that may sound like dramatic rhetoric, but it wasn't drama. Bannon got the drift and asked about, quote, access that's not the front door. He even cited what he believed was 24/7 surveillance on Epstein. Then Epstein offered a hidden rear entrance where someone would let Bannon in. Those messages matching Bannon's phone number, according to Guardian reporting, when his name is not technically listed in those. Now, Bannon emailed about secretly trying to help Epstein redeem his reputation. Think about how some people are in trouble just for bantering with him or getting benefits from him at some broad level, totally unrelated to, say, his island. Here, Bannon is aware of how much trouble Epstein is in and how much criticism there is of his past conduct, and he wants to help him. When Epstein recounts how, he writes in one of these new emails, Christians he met with feel the media portraying him as beyond redemption was, to Epstein, deeply troubling and offensive. Bannon responds, "We must counter the rapist who traffics in female children to be raped by the world's most powerful, richest men," as kind of a storyline, if you read the email, the way he's putting it. A man who, quote, can't be redeemed. He adds, "You're a lot of things, which we will show, but you are not that." Why is one of Trump's top aides, and they had a falling out that I'll get to, telling Epstein in no uncertain all caps terms, "You're not that guy"? Accusers and a lot of evidence certainly suggests otherwise. And I want you to note here how Bannon speaks of them on a team, that they are going to do this together and show Epstein's, quote, better side, if you will, quote unquote, or just better and figuratively. This went beyond emailing ideas. Bannon made 15 hours of video of Epstein for what he called a documentary, and this was in a key period, months leading up to what we now know was his arrest and then death. No movie has come out. There is a 2021 trailer for something called The Monsters. That's the linkage I mentioned, that we knew some of this, but now we see behind the scenes how Bannon was not, just making a movie or an interview, but wanted to help him redeem himself from what all these accusers and survivors and evidence has shown him to be. The Monsters was some kind of catchy title. It shows them talking about accountability movements that targeted Epstein, like Time's Up.
The future is for the way women think.
The way women think.
That's correct.
Is that not a sop because of all the depravity you've done against young women? Your new sop is that their women's thinking is the future?
No, I've always believed that women would be, in fact, be able to take over. I'm a firm believer and supporter of Time's Up.
He's a supporter of Time's Up, he claims there. Many parties may now be extra interested in that video series or evidence. Bannon says he will release a film early next year. And what else is coming sooner than next year is more photos from Congress. We're going to fit in a break, but when we come back, 50 Cent comes back on the beat discussing his favorite villain. That's by the end of the hour. But next, why the head of the Republican Party says the Republican Party could be doomed in these midterms.
Before you go to extremes to fix sagging and wrinkles with expensive injections, try this first, Olay Regenerist. In a survey of women, 71% said their skin was visibly firmer in 2 weeks without painful prices. For me, it's only Olay.
Thursday, as President Trump repeated his threats to begin military strikes on land targets in Venezuela. The new sanctions target family members of President Nicolas Maduro, as well as 6 crude oil tankers and associated shipping companies. Meanwhile, Reuters reports the U.S. is preparing to intercept more ships transporting Venezuelan oil after it seized a massive Venezuelan oil tanker on Wednesday. Some Democratic lawmakers and at least one Republican have condemned the seizure, which Venezuela condemned as an act of piracy. Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen said the move shows the Trump administration's cover story that it's seeking to interdict drugs is a, quote, big lie. He added, quote, "This is just one more piece of evidence that this is really about regime change by force," unquote. However, the Senate's top Democrat, Minority Leader Senator Chuck Schumer, refused to say he opposes regime change in Venezuela. Schumer spoke with CNN's Jake Tapper Thursday.
Do you disagree with President Trump's ultimate goal of regime change in Venezuela?
Look, the bottom line is President Trump throws out so many different things in so many different ways, you don't even know what the heck he's talking about. You know, obviously, if Maduro would just flee on his own, everyone would like that. But we don't know what the heck he's up to when he talks about that. So it's very, you cannot say, I endorse this, I endorse that.
California Democratic Congressmember Ro Khanna blasted Schumer's comments, writing, quote, "Yes, Democrats oppose regime change war in Venezuela. Instead of wasting trillions on endless wars, we must invest in jobs, health care, and housing for Americans. Why is this hard? We need a new generation to lead our party with moral clarity and conviction," Congressmember Khanna wrote. In the Gaza Strip, at least 12 people were killed in the past 24 hours as torrential rains and floods descended on the besieged territory, collapsing shelters, makeshift tents, and what remained of homes and buildings damaged by Israel's relentless war. Among the victims are 3 children who died of hypothermia due to the winter storm. This comes as Israel's military continues to violate the U.S.-brokered ceasefire deal it agreed to October 10th. Israeli forces killed at least 2 Palestinians in Rafah on Wednesday. In the occupied West Bank, Israel's approved the establishment of nearly 800 new settler homes. The Israeli settlements are illegal under international law. Tens of millions of U.S. residents are set to see the cost of their health insurance plans skyrocket after the Senate rejected a bill that would have extended tax credits under the Affordable Care Act. On Thursday, 4 Republican senators sided with Democrats and independents who voted in favor of a 3-year extension of the health care subsidies. But the legislation failed on a vote of 51 to 48 after falling short of the 60 needed to break a Republican filibuster. Without a deal by December 31st, some 22 million people will likely see their premiums double on average. This is Georgia Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock.
Republicans today have taken a system that's already struggling and broken it down even more. And the consequences for ordinary people, many of them in their own red districts, will be that they will have to delay response to their health care. They will have to find a way to pay more higher premiums. And for many people, they will literally pay with their lives.
South Carolina public health officials say hundreds of people are in isolation or quarantine amidst a rapidly spreading measles outbreak in a northwestern region of the state with lower rates of vaccination. So far, 111 measles cases have been recorded, all but 6 of which occurred in unvaccinated people. Arizona and Utah are also experiencing a significant measles outbreak. Nationally, there have been almost 2,000 measles cases recorded in the United States this year, causing at least 3 deaths. The U.S. declared measles eliminated in the year 2000, but the disease has returned after vaccination rates fell during the COVID pandemic. A Democratic lawmaker from Michigan filed articles of impeachment Thursday against Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. Congresswoman Haley Stevens accuses Kennedy of abdication of duty by restricting access to vaccines, spreading absurd conspiracies, and putting lives in danger.
RFK Jr. has turned his back on science, on public health, and on the American people. Under his watch, families are less safe, healthcare costs are skyrocketing, and life-saving research, including right here in Michigan, is being gutted.
Democratic leaders, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, have declined to co-sponsor the articles of impeachment. Meanwhile, the FDA is reportedly considering putting a black box warning on COVID vaccines, a warning reserved for drugs that can cause death. We'll have more on this story after headlines. We'll speak with a former top vaccine expert at the CDC who resigned in June. Republican lawmakers in Indiana have rejected a push by President Trump to redraw the state's congressional map ahead of next year's midterm elections. On Thursday, 21 state senators with the Republican majority crossed the aisle to side with Democrats opposing the mid-decade redistricting effort, which was aimed at giving all 9 of Indiana's congressional seats to Republicans. The upset vote came after some Republican lawmakers who opposed the plan described the violent threats they'd received from President Trump's supporters. Ahead of the vote, the advocacy branch of the Heritage Foundation issued a warning to Indiana lawmakers, quote, "If the Indiana Senate fails to pass the map, all federal funding will be stripped from the state, roads will not be paved, guards' bases will close, major projects will stop. These are the stakes, and every no vote will be to blame," they wrote. Kilmar Abrego Garcia has reunited with his family in Maryland after a federal judge ordered his immediate release from a Pennsylvania ICE jail Thursday. But Abrego Garcia has to check in with immigration officials today, just hours after U.S. District Judge Paula Zenas ruled against the Trump administration, writing, quote, "Since Abrego Garcia's return from wrongful detention in El Salvador, he's been redetained, again without lawful authority," she wrote. Abrego Garcia's case has been at the center of Trump's brutal crackdown on immigration. To see our coverage of his case, go to our website, democracynow.org. A U.S. citizen from Minnesota's Somali American community speaking out after ICE agents racially profiled and wrongfully arrested him earlier this week in Minneapolis. Mubashir, who asked only to be identified by his first name, said he was on his lunch break Tuesday when masked federal agents tackled and pushed him. The 20-year-old informed the agents he was a U.S. citizen and could show them his passport, but instead he said the agents put him in a headlock, took him into custody, detained him for hours without access to water and medical care. Mubashir described his violent arrest during a press conference Wednesday.
All I did was step outside as a Somali American, and I just got chased by a masked person. The agent then, at one point, he didn't identify himself. He didn't say ICE, stop. Like, I felt like I was getting assaulted. I was getting kidnapped, and that's exactly what it was. And the way they were treating me, it was inhumane. They dragged me across the road. They slammed me to the ground, choked me. That was uncalled for.
Federal immigration agents have arrested more than 400 people across Minnesota since Trump last week called Somali immigrants garbage in a racist tirade. On Capitol Hill, Democratic lawmakers repeatedly called on Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to resign as they confronted her on Trump's immigration crackdown during a heated House Homeland Security Committee hearing Thursday. Noem stood defiant, defending Trump's nationwide raids, mass deportations, and the use of force by federal agents. Her opening statement was briefly interrupted by protesters, one of whom chanted, quote, "Get ICE off our streets, stop terrorizing our communities," unquote. Democratic lawmakers accuse Noem of lying and corruption. Meanwhile, Congressmember Delia Ramirez of Chicago, the daughter of Guatemalan immigrants, announced she's taking the first steps to impeach Noem. This is a portion of Ramirez's remarks to Noem.
You lied on the record, and you lied to members of this committee. You violated court orders by not turning around deportation flights bound for El Salvador, where we know that hundreds of people under your leadership have reported that they were raped, they were beaten, and they nearly died. And your agents used chemical weapons in Chicago despite court orders from District Court Judge Ellis forbidding their use.
We'll be joined by Congressmember Delia Ramirez later in the broadcast. The Justice Department's once again failed to bring an indictment against New York Attorney General Letitia James on charges she lied on a mortgage application. It's yet another blow to President Trump's campaign of retribution against his political enemies. On Thursday, a federal grand jury in Alexandria, Virginia, refused to indict James after a separate grand jury in Norfolk last week also rejected an indictment sought by the Justice Department. The House of Representatives voted Thursday to reverse President Trump's executive orders stripping 1 million unionized federal workers at 40 federal agencies of their collective bargaining rights. 20 Republicans joined Democrats to send the legislation to the Senate over the objections of House Republican leaders who opposed the bill. Randy Irwin, president of the National Federation of Federal Employees, wrote, quote, "The president cannot unilaterally strip working people of their constitutional freedom of association. In bipartisan fashion, Congress has asserted their authority to hold the president accountable for the biggest attack on workers that this country has ever seen," unquote. The Walt Disney Company announced Thursday it'll invest $1 billion in OpenAI after agreeing to allow users of the Sora video generation app to make videos with hundreds of copyrighted Disney characters. It's a first-of-its-kind move by a major studio coming 2 years after Hollywood screenwriters and actors went on strike to protect their livelihoods from generative AI. Responding to Disney's deal, the Writers Guild of America wrote, quote, "Companies, including OpenAI, have stolen vast libraries of works owned by the studios and created by WGA members and Hollywood labor to train their artificial intelligence systems. We've repeatedly called for the studios to take legal action to defend the valuable intellectual property we help to create," unquote. And President Trump signed an executive order Thursday establishing a single national standard on artificial intelligence, blocking states from enacting their own AI regulations. The order directs the Justice Department set up an AI litigation task force, which would bring lawsuits against any state that passes new AI laws. It also directs the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, to look into withholding funding for rural broadband internet from states seeking to regulate AI. This comes after a New York Times investigation found Lutnick and his sons run a network of companies and industries ranging from cryptocurrencies to AI data centers, and that Lutnick has promoted policies supporting the construction of data centers while serving in government. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, Democracy.
Been previously published represent just a tiny portion of what Democrats say are at least 95,000 images handed over. But already we're getting a new glimpse into the convicted sex trafficker's broad social circle. At least 3 images feature Donald Trump, including this one, where he's surrounded by 6 unidentified women whose faces have been redacted by the committee. At least 2 others feature Trump ally Steve Bannon. Others show Bill Clinton and Woody Allen. Now, we should note the images show no evidence of wrongdoing. We do not know the context in which they were taken. ms.now is out to those pictured for comment. They have previously denied any wrongdoing. As for the vast collection of images the committee has not yet released, a source familiar with the panel's investigation tells ms.now that fewer than 1,000 of the roughly 95,000 photos contain nudity. Here's Ranking Member Robert Garcia on the unreleased images.
These pictures, some of these photos are really disturbing, and I know we've put some out today. There are many others, and some of the other photos that we did not put out today are incredibly disturbing.
Keep in mind, these images from the Epstein estate were obtained because oversight Democrats demanded more information connected to Epstein be released. These images, they are separate from the Epstein files. Those files are still in the possession of Donald Trump's Justice Department. And by law, the department has just 1 week to hand them over to Congress. Joining us now to discuss, Ankush Kadori, former federal prosecutor and senior writer for Political Magazine, and Christy Greenberg, former federal prosecutor and an ms.now legal analyst.
Ankush, a picture's worth 100,000 words in this case, in that you have this trove of information about this world that existed. It says a lot about, from the images, who would spend time in that space, whether it's a president or a politician or a banker or whomever. So you get a sense of what's at stake here for the interest in getting out who was a part of this. What does this tell you about the kind of materials that are out there potentially? That, Representative Garcia said, there are images that we saw that are very disturbing. Don't know if those will ever see the light of day, but at least we now have an inside glimpse of this world a little bit more than we did yesterday and the day before. What does it say to you about what these images could potentially represent, particularly as we sit here and wait for the Justice Department to release the Epstein files?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're someone who's very interested in this issue, I mean, these images are adding some color and context, for lack of a better phrase, right? I mean, this is a very ugly affair. So we're seeing images that are recording a very, very, I don't even know what the word is at this point, really tragic a period of time. And, all of these people, for the most part, we've known had, at best, I would say, poor judgment associating with this person. I don't know what's going to be in the images to come. I have to say I'm really not a fan of, like, a drip, drip, drip type of release. I don't think this is the sort of subject that is one that should be treated in this way, but nevertheless, here we are. It's Congress, and Congress is doing its thing. I'm really very much looking forward to seeing whether the Justice Department actually produces a lot in response to the law, and like how that comes out, if it comes out next week.
And Christy, I'm surprised we actually don't have the countdown clock already, but the clock is ticking for when the Justice Department is facing this December 18th deadline to release all of the documents as mandated under the Transparency Act that was passed by members last month and signed into law by Donald Trump. But there are still a lot of questions that remain about whether the DOJ is going to abide by this law. You had Thomas Massie, though, say this week, almost mocking congressional oversight responsibilities, that it's not like the Justice Department is being held in contempt of Congress right now, but that if they don't respond to this is a law with criminal implications. Can you talk a little bit about what these criminal implications look like and how actually the Justice Department would be held accountable if they decide not to abide by the law here?
Well, based on the court filings that were filed about releasing discovery materials, releasing grand jury materials in 3 of the cases, 1 in Florida and 2 in New York, there's no indication that the Department of Justice is saying point blank, we are not going to release the files. The indications from the filings are that they do intend to make some production. But what that production is and when we will see it are 2 open questions. The Department of Justice...
So I think, from how I'm looking at this, Ankush, you've got the president is a player here as well. And the president has, obviously downplayed this whole Epstein episode, counter to where he was when he was a candidate running for office, in which, as you recall recovering, he was all about, we're going to release the files, right? Here's what the president had to say last hour about this.
Well, I haven't seen it, but I mean, everybody knew this man. He was all over Palm Beach. He has photos with everybody. I mean, almost there are hundreds and hundreds of people that have photos with him. So that's no big deal. I know nothing about it.
It's no big deal. I know nothing about it. What are we hearing from the man whose picture we have, with Epstein, with young women? We don't know the context again of the photo, but there it is. So you can't, deniability and saying, I don't know, you don't remember?
Yes, it's hard to believe that he really doesn't remember anything about this. To me, Trump's presence in these files, whether the Justice Department or the states, that to me is the most important issue. Because we can all talk about Woody Allen and Bill Clinton and on and on and on. Only one of these people is the sitting president.
Right.
Only one of these people is the sitting president, and only one of them, beyond that, spun up this issue with himself and his political allies, including his sitting vice president, who laughed about this issue on a podcast with Theo Vaughn, including Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who spent years spinning up this issue. So now, this is the one element of this that I sort of feel rather strongly about, they deserve this.
Right.
They brought this upon themselves. They deserve to be embarrassed and ashamed about it. And there is a reason why all year Trump, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi have been running around with endless different incoherent excuses about why they can't do this, that, or the other. They just basically got caught red-handed, I think, potentially lying to the American people, or at best being extremely reckless for years.
And Ankush, to pick up where Christy left off, but unfortunately wasn't able to finish that thought. But in terms of concerns that the Justice Department might not comply with the law or might not fully comply with the law and selectively release information. There's new reporting today from CBS News that survivors are now demanding a forensic audit of the files to ensure that there is a full accounting of what is out there and to be able to potentially catch the Justice Department if there are what they're calling chain of custody issues. Have you ever been involved with an audit like this, and what do you think it exactly entails?
No, I've never heard of anyone auditing the Justice Department's production of anything. It is not going to happen, would be my guess. The Justice Department won't let it happen, and frankly, I don't even think they should let it happen.
Could it happen, hypothetically, though, if Democrats take back the majority and this is something that oversight decides to undertake?
Well, the files are in the hands of the Justice Department. So the big question would be, would the Trump administration even respond to more a subpoena from Democrats in the House majority or not? That is very unclear to me. If you want to see this resolved definitively, I'm not sure it's ever going to happen, quite honestly, because there's going to be this material just floating around. However, I think it would probably have to be a new occupant of the White House in 2029 who maybe even campaigns, quite honestly, on releasing this stuff related to Trump.
Meanwhile, you have senators on the Judiciary Committee raising concerns about the possibility of files tampering. This is part of what they said. To reassure the American public that any files released have not been tampered with or concealed, the chain of custody forms associated with records and evidence in the Epstein files must be accounted for, analyzed, and released. That was part of what we just heard from Jackie there. How difficult or easy would it be for this DOJ to be tampering with those files?
It would be very difficult to do that and not get caught. Everything they are doing is in a centralized document review platform. That is what the court filings said this week. And that's what you would normally see in a large document production like this. There's a digital footprint for everything they're doing. Documents get uploaded to the platform. If they get modified in some way, if there are redactions applied, if things are removed, that's all. There's a record of all of that. So you could just go back. There's a search run. For example, if they run a search for Donald Trump's name, you would see how many documents it is that he appeared in, how many search results were there, how many times did his name come up. So again, if we see what is released and it's very little with respect to Donald Trump, and then at some point later they are able to get access to those search results, and you see that there is a massive difference, you'll know that they withheld documents, that they redacted documents that they did not provide to the American people. It should be very easy to trace.
So in this larger conversation about accountability, I do want to pivot. You have Jack Smith's deposition for the House Judiciary next week. Committee Democrats are calling for the public release of Volume 2 of his report. As you know, that relates to Trump's possession of hundreds of classified documents, effort to keep them despite subpoenas and other efforts. What do you think we could glean from Volume 2?
So much.
Like how much?
Get better with time, and they're waiting, and I'm anxious to see what they do on the 19th. I'm sure they're going to scrub this, they're going to redact this, they'll sanitize it any way they can, and then they'll release whatever they release. And I'm sure it's never going to be enough, because a lot of people are going to say they're hiding something. And given what's
people who are going to know, I mean, people like you, Daniel, you're going to know. Right, so if they redact to not hurt people, is what Trump said, okay, that would be redacting your name. I mean, you've chosen to put your name and face out here. So is Haley, so have so many other survivors, but some have not. Their names should be redacted, faces redacted, right? But you're going to read through things in there, and you're going to know if it's all there.
I do think that's something that's been frustrating for survivors. Well, first of all, we're all in this together, and that has been something magical that has been born out of this. Just seeing Haley's face like now is just incredible to know we have that camaraderie and that sistership. But I think something that we are a little bit frustrated with is I put the FOIA request in for my 302, which is the FBI file, right? I requested my FBI file, my own file.
Your own, the stuff about
me. I'm not asking for anything else, just me. And I put that request in September, and we haven't, many of us, I don't actually know a single survivor who has seen their own FBI file. And so what that means is we're living off of our memory, which dates can get a little fuzzy. I know I talked to law enforcement in 2008. 2008's a long year. That's, 365 days of going through whatever we possibly can find. So that is a little bit frustrating in that we are a unit, and we are moving through this together, and we will be looking out for each other, and we will be, okay, here is so-and-so, and this is what happened here. But at that same time, nobody's making it very easy, and there's no roadmap for this. So it's going to be trial by fire.
Stacey, what do you make what she's saying here, that since September for her own FBI file?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And you know what's a real shame here, based on what you're saying? The administration, it's a law. They need to put out the file. If they don't do justice and they put out a fully scrubbed, redacted file next week, why should the burden
or
have
incomplete,
to switch?
right?
Incomplete, or they say it's an ongoing investigation against these Democrats that Trump ordered, so we can't release this aspect of the file. And then what that does is it puts the burden on the survivors of having to come forward when maybe some of them aren't ready or don't want to come forward. The burden should never be put on them to correct the record and make it straight. The burden is on the Justice Department to give a correct record and abide by the law. And there's just been so much signaling and behavior that indicates that they're going to not do right by the public. And that's the prediction, I think, from most people.
I mean, Haley, obviously you've noted before you voted for Trump, obviously, and thought perhaps that those files would come out right away, something that he could do anytime, right? And at this point, obviously, he's chosen not to do so. But what about Stacey's point, right? That you and Danielle, you've been on this show many times. You've done media interviews, right? You're putting yourself out there every day at cost to your own life, to re-traumatizing, to triggering, to all of those things because of the absence of transparency from the government.
I mean, I've just been doing this for so long, and I actually called Long Beach Sheriff's Department to get my file and records years ago, and they told me that they had referred it to the FBI. They had to hand everything over to the FBI. I haven't put in a application to get my records, but you're absolutely right. To her point, this is asinine. I don't understand why the DOJ and the FBI are not being put under an extreme investigation as to why, as an American citizen and as a survivor of Epstein, why these girls are going through trauma, including me, and now we're being denied our records, our personal records that we want. So when the records do come out, we can compare and contrast to our stories and what's in the records. And it's a shame that it's come down to this, and it's all tactic. This is all a tactic. The fact that it's now close to the deadline and the DOJ hasn't released, in my opinion, this is just another example of this administration weaponizing the DOJ for political gain. And it gets so exhausting when we as a collective are coming out and we're saying enough is enough. This is not political. Help us. And it's been, we've been to the Capitol, Danny, several times, and I've been there when these girls and these women are expressing to Congress, I want my files. I want my FBI files. Yeah. Why isn't that being talked about enough? Why 3 months into it are we still not receiving our FBI files? What is the DOJ doing, and why is this administration continuing to play these games and to delay and to distract? You got a week, 7 days, and we're not letting up.
So, Charlie, what do you make of that? And can Thomas Massie, as a Republican right now, leading the charge, obviously you've got Ro Khanna and Garcia, you've got other Democrats working with him, but can he get this over the finish line?
Well, I think to a certain extent it's out of Massie's hands and Congress's hands. It's in DOJ's hands, and they're the ones who are going to release this. The question is, what does Congress do?
Right. Can Congress hold them accountable and make sure there aren't redactions or
Well, there are things
deletions?
They could do. As a former appropriator, you can do all kinds of things to fence their money, hold it up for DOJ until they do certain things. That would require Republican leadership, though, to step up and basically threaten the administration. If you don't give us those files, you're not going to get funding for things that you really care about. There are certain things that they can do to pressure them. I don't know that they would. I don't know if the leadership would do that. I'm sure Thomas Massie would if he were able to.
Yeah.
But that's where they are. But it's going to take some real muscle from Congress to force.
And we'll see after that discharge, where all of a sudden you went from 4 lone people for months to everybody but one. What would happen here? All right. Thank you all so very much. I appreciate it, Danielle and Haley. Thanks so much to both. The custody of her child with Leavitt's brother Michael, whom she was engaged to until about a decade ago. Ferreira was shuttled to several detention centers around the country before ultimately being sent to Louisiana, more than 1,600 miles from where she lives, where she calls home in Massachusetts. Ferreira has been living in the United States since 1998. That's when she came here from Brazil. She was a 6-year-old child. The Trump administration calls her a, quote, criminal illegal alien who overstayed a tourist visa. Her attorney maintains that Ferreira is in the process of getting a green card, which she had begun years ago, and that she is protected from deportation through an Obama-era immigration policy. And out front now for her first television interview, Bruna Caroline Ferreira, and she is joined by her attorney, Todd Pomerleau. And I really appreciate both of you being here. So, Bruna, I just want to start, when this story first broke, I kind of had to look at it a couple of times to understand what actually had happened here, and then learning more and more about you and who you were. I understand on the day that this happened, you were running out of the house, shoelaces not even tied, to pick up your son from school.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me what happened.
I was heading out to pick up Michael from school, and a vehicle drove towards me, so I decided to back up to get out of his way, an unmarked vehicle, may I add. And then I noticed in my rearview mirror there was another vehicle, and then it was just a swarm of people, and I was quickly rushed to the Revere Police Department for them to clarify my identity. They didn't know my name. They asked me my name, so I asked them, how could you possibly know who I am and where I live without you having some kind of a warrant? I wasn't presented with any of those documents. So I just started panicking, trying to see if I could get somebody, an emergency contact, anybody to answer me to pick up Michael from school, and just thought.
Because at this point you were running with your shoelaces untied because you wanted to be first in line to school, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So then all of a sudden no one's going to pick your child up from school.
Correct.
Okay, one thing you said there though, so they're waiting. This vehicle, another vehicle comes up, this swarm of people as you describe it. And then you're saying, but they didn't know your name.
No warrant, they asked me, is your name Bruna? And I just asked, well, how do you know who I am if you don't have any type of warrant? How do I know who you are?
So they knew you were Bruna, but
Yes.
they didn't have a warrant for your arrest.
So they wanted me to verify my identity with a driver's license. So I just asked, where do you have a warrant? So then they said, let's just rush her over to the Revere Police Department. And there they verified my identity and made a call. I made an emergency call for somebody to go pick up Michael. And after that, I was shuffled around all the entire country.
So I want to ask you about that. Todd, though, okay, what happened here then, do you think? They knew her name.
Correct.
But they didn't have any warrant, they didn't have any proof for it, but they knew her name.
Well, at first they played dumb and acted like it was a traffic stop, so they asked her for her license, but then somebody says, are you Bruna? Which causes her concern. Plus, traffic cops don't have masks over their faces. That's how immigration and customs enforcement, functions
These guys
days.
had masks.
Yeah, they cover their face, and that's what they did here. And again, they don't show her any warrant, and then apparently they manufactured a warrant when she was in Vermont several hours later, which is highly unusual. And then when you look at the video, TMZ leaked the video. I hadn't seen the video before when I was on the show a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you see 5 cars just quickly swarm. It looks similar like an undercover drug buy, where they just go in right away and they know who they're getting. And what was strange about it is hardly any people knew where she lived. She was driving a vehicle not registered to her. It seemed like they knew exactly where she was going to be, which was customary. She regularly would pick her son up. She'd leave around the same time, multiple days a week. They knew exactly where she was going to be.
So it sounds like you're saying you were targeted.
Premeditated.
Premeditated.
Very organized.
And because of who she is. Because of the relationship to the press secretary.
It seems to be. And what's bizarre about her case anyway, she's been trying to get a green card literally since she was almost 6 years old. And she was in the process of doing that. And literally one day after she filed her most recent green card application, the Trump administration tried to accelerate her deportation case by starting it up again. She had a case that's been effectively shelved since the Obama administration, since Barack Hussein Obama put her in removal proceedings. And it was just basically paused so that she could try to get her green card. She had DACA over a course of years, and she was just merely waiting her turn. May 5th, she had her final hearing, but they accelerated the process the day after she filed her application.
So, Bruna, just to be clear, you came here when you were 6 years old.
Yes.
And so obviously you didn't come here legally, first of all.
No.
And you didn't have any choice in the matter, right? I mean, so then
Very excited to come and meet my little sister, yes.
Right, okay, to meet your little sister for the first time. So essentially, you've lived here your entire life, as far as you remember it.
Correct.
Okay, so when they say to you that you're a criminal illegal alien, which is what they're technically calling you specifically and explicitly, this administration, what do you say to that?
I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken for my son, you know. I'm heartbroken for my mother, who has worked for a quarter of a century cleaning houses, earned an honest living, has paid her taxes. I've been a law-abiding citizen. I don't even have a parking ticket, and I'm so proud of it. I'm proud of my name, and I carry it like a badge of honor, you know, like being on an honor roll. And now my child is sitting somewhere watching them broadcast this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. As a child, he must be terrified. Is it true? Did my mom do something? Do I not know about it? Gossip in school? I don't know what's going on in his little mind, and I just want him to know that none of those things are true, honey, and we're going to square this all away.
So that when you go in that day and you make that emergency call, then you lose your phone, right? You don't
Correct.
have a phone.
Yeah.
Okay. For 26 days?
26 days.
26 days, no phone.
Yes.
Okay.
And
I can't even imagine what it's like to not
For
be
a
able to
mother,
talk to your child
yeah.
for 26 days.
And her phone somehow got broken during the arrest, too, which is on TMZ. It's not a violent arrest, but her phone managed to get broken.
Your phone got broken.
Correct.
Yep.
What was that even like, to not be able to know what happened to your child or even who picked him up from school or anything for 26 days, Bruna?
You have a lot of time to think in there, you know, and you really think the worst. You think the worst, but the luck that I had is that I was surrounded by so many women that had 4 children, you know, one was pregnant, you know, and I can't imagine. I just tried to put myself in their shoes. I was in such a horrible situation, but they were praying for me and I was praying for them, and being able to contact an attorney that could expedite my process, because some people are in there for a year and a half. I can't fathom a mother not knowing where her son is for a year and a half and who's with him, what he's eating, if he's going to bed on time, if he's sick. I can't imagine.
That's unbearable. I mean, it's the cruelty of it.
It's cruel.
So you are, okay, so but in this time then, how many places do you go? You're taken from place to place, right? How are you? And can you just talk about what it was like inside? Who was there? I mean, were you treated well? I mean, tell us.
It's mind-boggling to know that they know where you're going, but they won't tell you. So I was shuffled from Massachusetts quickly to New Hampshire, from New Hampshire to Vermont, Vermont to Philadelphia, Philadelphia to Texas. When I got to Texas, I asked the ICE agent, because it said Mexico, and I said, can you please, please, please have a little bit of empathy for me and tell me if you're taking me across the border? And he said, no, we're taking you to the final destination, your final stop before your deportation, which is South Louisiana. Hardly anyone ever gets out of there. So I just mustered up the courage to cry and sleep throughout that final voyage. And when I got to South Louisiana, I was finally able to, by the grace of God, some girl let me use her minutes to make a phone call and then to tell my family where I was and the attorneys.
And so that's, Todd, when you are able to help to get her out for now.
We got the case the Saturday before Thanksgiving, and, you know, like when she was taken to Vermont, she said that one of the ICE officers didn't think she spoke English and said, oh, we got more business coming in. And then she winds up in Louisiana in another for-profit hellhole prison, paid for by taxpayers. She has 2 businesses. This is a woman who has 2 businesses, is a single mother, paying her taxes, and winds up in a for-profit prison in Louisiana. It's just unconscionable what they're doing on a daily basis. And then beyond that, this false character assassination, keep labeling her a criminal illegal alien. Their own lawyer on Monday, when we had a bond hearing, said, I stipulate, after we argued that she was not a criminal illegal alien, that was patently false, factually, legally, and then they're still doubling down, claiming she was arrested for a crime. The only arrest in her life was this unconstitutional bag job on November the 12th.
You know, Bruna, I want to understand this, and I think, you know, on some level, I don't want to make it about Karoline Leavitt, but that is why your story has, of course, risen to, you know, you have become, whether you like it or not, right, a face of this for so many people. I know you chose her to be your son's godmother, right? I mean, there's a relationship there. You're not married to your son's father, but you have, you say, you know, you function, you co-parent together, you share custody. The Washington Post says that the White House said you never lived with your son. They were clearly portraying you as an absentee parent.
Why? I just want to, Why lie?
Why do you think that is?
Why lie? Because I have so many friends and family that have called me and said, why would anyone lie about this when it's 2025? We have a digital footprint of everything. Every Wednesday, typically my son and I go to Dave & Buster's because it's half off. We're extreme couponers at our home.
Yeah.
And I can't wrap my mind around it, but it doesn't make any sense. I'm just as lost as you are, and I'm hoping that this interview gets me some answers.
Have you had a chance to talk to Karoline Leavitt?
No.
I mean, what would you say to her? I guess I'm still stunned by the fact that you chose her to be your son's godmother, right?
Over
I mean,
my
you
sister.
Had it over your own sister.
Over my sister.
And now all of this is happening. I mean, what do you have to say to her?
I think what I would have to say to Caroline is just because you went to a Catholic school doesn't make you a good Catholic. You know, you're a mother. You are a mother now, and you should know. How would you feel if you were in my shoes? You know, how would you feel if somebody did this to you? Because at the end of the day, nobody's above the law. You know, it could happen to anybody. So I can't wrap my mind around it. And hopefully there's a logical explanation for all of this.
I mean, this is just a picture of you. Obviously, we blurred your son's face out, but it's you and Caroline.
Yes. Little pool party.
Yes. I mean,
in Atkinson, yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. I'm trying to understand and have faith that there's some logical explanation behind any of this, but there isn't. I'm not the first. I'm surely not going to be the last. There's thousands of women and families and children being separated daily. Where does it end? When does it stop?
So, Todd, what do you think is happening here? I understand you deal with immigration law. You and I have talked about other cases you're dealing with, but this case is extremely specific in the sense that you're dealing with the press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, of the United States, right? That you are, that she's the godmother to your son. And so, and they are the ones, the White House, Washington Post reporting, right, saying that she's never lived with her son. She says that's false, portraying her as an absentee mother. I mean, you have all of that in the center of your legal proceedings. So what does that mean?
Well, equal justice under the law. It shouldn't matter who she might have been related to or not.
Yeah.
The reality is here that she's in line for her green card like tens of thousands of other people. And throughout the country, people are just being illegally arrested when they're in the middle or the beginning or the end of a lawful process that Congress created roughly in the mid-90s. The laws aren't perfect, but they're there for a reason. People are entitled to due process of law. Bruna is. All those women sitting in Louisiana that were with her are entitled to the same process and protections under the law. She had the lowest bond possible set. And this is what I refer to as the unconstitutional merry-go-round. We see it happen to a lot of people. She's basically following a lawful process to then get illegally arrested, to then have to either hire a lawyer or hope for a volunteer, to then basically sue, to then have to pay money out of her own pocket to get out of jail to get back to where she started.
So, Bruna, when can you see Michael?
Hopefully very soon. I mean, it's going to be hopefully a Christmas miracle. I don't really have that answer right now, but I'm hoping it's sooner rather than later because I have been patiently waiting for 27 years and some days now, you know, and it's just cruel. It doesn't make any sense, you know. I wish I really had the answer, but it doesn't make any sense, and it costs me so much money every time I have to go and file more paperwork, and it's not normal. It's not normal to constantly live in like a fight or flight mode, and I've been doing it for so long, and thanks to yoga, it helps me zen and really gather my thoughts, but it's not normal for anybody to live this way.
And obviously you're in the middle. You're in the middle of this. I mean, this is far from over.
And they delayed her process probably 1 or 2 years because then her case goes to Louisiana. She's in the detained docket. Now she's out of jail, so now the case transfers back to Boston, and then there's lag time on the file getting there. So her case that was originally coming to a conclusion in May is now kicked back to September, and that's probably not in the end.
So are they preventing you from seeing your child, or is that you and your husband working that out, or how does that work from here?
I tried to see Michael. However, they put me on a GPS monitor, unlawfully, may I add. So his father had agreed to bring him to my house after a haircut. I called him at 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and 7 p.m., Mike. And he did not answer. So I'm going to have to let the attorneys do all of the talking from now on because this has just gone on for far too long. And it has been going on for over 10 years, you know, since before Michael was even born. So it has to end somewhere, and it has to end
Well, it's excruciating, and it can only imagine as a mother excruciating what you're enduring. But Bruna, thank you very much for talking. Todd, thank you very much. And of course, we'll see how this goes.
We appreciate you having us on to be heard. Thank you so much.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
And next, MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell making his push to
one of them that is clearly Trump. It says, "I'm huge." Okay. We also have this one. This is Trump with several people in it. You can see this, and the faces have been redacted. You can also see here, I guess there's thousands of these photos. I'll read it. Breaking: Oversight Dems receive 95,000 new photos from Jeffrey Epstein's estate. These disturbing images raise even more questions about Epstein and his relationship with some of the most powerful men in the world. Time to end this White House cover-up. Release the files. And when you see something like, this, what kind of dirt do people have on Trump? What kind of dirty things did Trump do? I don't even know. I mean, I have no way to predict these kind of things. That's Trump's name, of course. Trump Condom 450. It also says, finally. There's another word down there. I don't know what the other word it could, from the shape, it could be a B, it could be a P, could be a D for Donald. I really don't know. But that's clearly Trump's name is Trump, and that's clearly Trump's picture there. You also notice when I was looking at this is there's like a receipt in the back. That's the old style receipts. So there's going to be paper trails on this stuff, right? There's also something that says here, I don't know, Phish's Eddie? I don't know. If anyone has any guess on that one, I'm just reading, showing you what it is. That's Trump, though. And then you also have Trump, and this person's guessing that these are with underage. I don't know. I just be honest with you, I don't know. I just know that that's Trump. And Elon Musk is even calling for prison time, which is kind of crazy in itself. Right down here, it says, only a matter of time before Bannon goes back to prison. Okay, I'll read it. Newly released photos of Jeffrey Epstein show him meeting with Steve Bannon, okay, with what appears to be a trafficking victim's photo sitting on Epstein's desk. Jeffrey Epstein did take photographs of victims, and these were viewed by many as, quote, trophies or form of leverage. And you wonder, like, does someone have leverage on Trump on this stuff? It's not just Trump. There's a lot of people involved with this stuff. I just want to make that clear. There's a lot of people in these things. 95,000 photos could be of anything. Jasmine Crockett, she says, this is about truth and justice for victims and survivors. The subpoenaed photos from the Epstein estate are deeply disturbing and raising serious questions about who knew what and when, which is exactly why the files need to be released. The Epstein Files Act is law. Trump can release them today. Okay. Take a look at this. This is also another representative. The photos released are disturbing and demonstrate Epstein's ties to powerful men, including Trump. The legal deadline is looming, but Trump could release today. And then you also have another person was writing, this giving different points of view. What kind of names could be in these? So Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, Woody Allen, Larry Sumner, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates. Redactions have been made by the committee. So some of these redactions, chances are, could be a victim, any number of reasons. There's so many photos to go through. You always want to be careful what you want to say about this stuff because, a lot of people can speculate on things. So that's why I say I tell you what I see, I tell you what I know, what I don't know. You also have this. This was Representative Garcia talking about it. Have a listen.
Right now, our plan is to demand that the president release the files, and we'll see what he does on the 19th. But I think, again, these pictures, some of these photos are really disturbing. And I know we've put some out today. There are many others. And some of the other photos that we did not put out today are incredibly disturbing. Well, right now, our plan.
So the phrase then, some of the other photos that we did not put out today are incredibly disturbing. Right? So, because you got to think about how do we show the public what people did, because they could have all kinds of stuff, right? And some are just like completely inappropriate to show the public for, not that you don't want to show who's guilty, just, they could be doing any number of things. So we got to figure out, like, how can you, release this in a way that's sensitive to the victims. I'll put it in that way. I think that's a better way to put it. But there could also be other things going on to where, like, is Trump trying to slow walk this thing? In my opinion, you know, it's not just Trump out for himself. It's probably connected to donors or, you know, any associates that are just like, yo, I don't want that stuff getting out there. And who knows what it could be? Because I can't predict, like, these kind of stuff. Yeah, you're probably going to get more of this, but I can't predict like this or then the stuff that they can't even show us right away, which I understand that. But you could at least release it to Congress, and we'll see. You know, you're going to have videos out there, various parties, this is Trump, and this is stuff we've seen before. There's probably just so much stuff. Then you have this, and I just want to put all together because you have to understand that this is a larger picture of the corruption that the Trump people are up to. So it says here, the National Trust for Historic Preservation filed a lawsuit Friday in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, representing the first major legal challenge to President Trump's planned 90,000 square foot ballroom addition. Because remember, Trump's basically, he's all about throwing parties. He's all about hanging out with the big money. And it relates to the Epstein thing, right? And these people do all sorts of crazy, whacked out things. Here's a quote here because he's tearing down the White House, right? No president is legally allowed to tear down portions of the White House without any review whatsoever. Not President Trump, not President Joe Biden, and not anyone else. That's coming from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So maybe they'll block him from building his stupid ballroom thing. And I also wanted to play this. This is from Representative Summers. This is a Representative Summer Lee. And listen to what she says regarding the Epstein thing. It's interesting.
So let's talk about the main event, the Epstein files. What don't we know? Like, just tell us, give us.
I don't know, I don't know. I mean, where to start? Some of you all may not know that, I'm very proud that I was able to force a vote in my subcommittee to subpoena the files, right? So, first of all, the DOJ has actually been compelled to release them since August, right? But, I guess what else? Since we got that subpoena, we've actually got so many. So all those little drips, right? The death by 1,000 cuts that the Trump administration is choosing, I couldn't tell you why they're choosing that. But that's what they're doing. So we have, subpoenas for, the banks. We've talked to, these institutions. Man, this is deep. This is deep, man. We're talking like the most powerful people, institutions, like nations are involved in this. And it's so obvious. And that's why they do not want to do a big drop.
Okay.
Like a guy is not a prince.
They could have like a
Netflix
release, but they're like, no, let's do like a weekly release, like an NBC.
Like dropping episodes, like
yeah,
old-fashioned.
just one episode at a time. Tune in next week. Well, because Netflix.
And that's what they're talking about, right? So I just bring that up. I just want to give you a different point of view because she mentions bank files and different institutions, countries, and then we're seeing here there's 95,000 of these photos, and Elon Musk is calling for, or only a matter of time before Bannon goes back to prison. Who knows what's going on? So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this one. I don't talk about Epstein all day. An undershirt, when I go out in public to have a fight loudly with my wife, okay. And then he's tweeting out this picture of him supposedly yelling at his wife, I guess. But this could be AI. I want to make that clear. He doesn't deny that it's him, but then he makes the joke kind of about the undershirt thing. Natalie then says JD and Usha allegedly spotted having a loud argument at the restaurant recently. So it's weird. I saw this thing floating around social media. I saw a few things on this and I was like, I don't know what to make of this. And then Vance even amplifies it by tweeting it out saying, I always wear an undershirt when I go out in public to have a fight loudly with my wife. I'll let you guys be the judge. I'm going to think that I'm more apt to think this is AI. That's my guess, but who knows? You read some replies to this. Linda Yacarino's laughy face. Dar says only is Peter Thiel allows it, right, JD? The left is stupid. Brian says this is real. Alaska says, look at that nose, man. It's not JD. Okay. So I'm going with AI on this one, but I'll let you guys be the judge of this. Why are we talking about JD and why am I checking his social media and why are we doing this stuff? Well, there's a more important scandal, and this is for real, is campaign finance. U.S. Supreme Court weighs challenge to campaign So we've got to talk about this Nick Fuentes guy. It's not going to be in the way that you think it is. Basically, he's been rising up in the social media ranks. Now he's going on TV giving whacked out interviews. And why is suddenly everyone always talking about this guy? As it turns out, a lot of this is bot driven. I'll repeat, a lot of this is bot driven. Turns out these are foreign bots. And in fact, Rutgers did a study on it. America Last. How Fuentes coordinated raids in foreign fake speech networks inflate his influence. Long story short, you got this guy, tweets out a bunch of crazy mustache party kind of stuff, okay? Crazy crap. And then you got a bunch of bots that retweet the crazy crap that he does and says within the first 30 minutes. And if you do that, you can manipulate the algorithm. And if you got enough money behind you to put out bot retweets, that can boost you suddenly, right? And get lots of subscribers, grow your account really, really fast. And then local, media may want to do a story on you and be, oh my God, who are you? You're so famous. Everyone's talking about you. And then you go on TV and you say more crazy stuff. Oh my God, can you believe the crazy stuff that he said? And then you go on another show. Okay, in the last interview, you said crazy stuff. Let's talk about that, said crazy stuff. And the more that you go on this stuff, people start to realize, man, this guy is crazy. Like, is the country moving in that direction to we're all mustache party kind of people? No, we're not. Okay. I made that clear. I'm not that kind of person. I saw this guy and they're like, for a minute, and I'm just like, dang, is this even legal to say this kind of stuff? It's like, it's really crazy stuff. If you want to watch it, you can. Be my guest. Here's the thing. It actually relates to the world that we live in, because if you understand, recently the European Union fined Elon Musk in relation to these kind of things, like who's funding your advertising and algorithm boosting stuff on your platform, what's going on with your blue check mark stuff, etc. Basically, like, there's a bunch of bots on Musk's platform and who's funding it and how the message is getting put out there. Because I'll give you an example. If Musk on his platform has a fake photo or a rumor of something, let's say you put out this photo that says this person committed violence and they live here, right? Think about how crazy that would be. And then it gets boosted and all the bots start boosting and everything, and everyone gets really angry at said person, but it's all based on a lie. That's the kind of power that Elon Musk has on his platform. Then he can get involved in politics, promote whatever lies or stories about particular politicians, boost particular politicians. And it's always been a question, like, how many bots are on Musk's platform? And the study by Rutgers actually really covers it very, very well. So this is from the Social Perception Lab at Rutgers University. I encourage you to read the whole thing. I'm going to go through the summary of it because I think it's really important. I'll read this the executive summary. It says, Nick Fuentes' surge into national visibility did not originate from a broad or sudden shift in American political sentiment. So Nick doesn't really represent the majority of us. In fact, anyone who watches it, I can tell you he's whacked out. It emerged from a pattern of online amplification that was unusually fast, unusually concentrated, and unusually foreign in origin. God, so it was like, they're just like, this is bonkers. It was like really fast, really concentrated, and like, foreign bots basically. This report examines the structure of the amplification, okay, the signals it produced inside the information environment, and the ways mainstream legacy institutions interpreted those signals as indicators of emerging relevance. The goal is not to explain Fuentes' ideology, right? Mustache party stuff. We're not talking about that. We're just mostly talking about the algorithm type stuff, or his existing audience, but to assess how synthetic engagement, real-world events, and media incentives converge to elevate a fringe figure into a central subject of national attention.
Your membership is more than just a card. It's your gateway to extraordinary experience.
They supply these really interesting charts, basically comparing accounts. So this is like just big accounts on Twitter, basically. Destiny, you got Ian Carroll, Hassan Piker, Elon Musk, and then you got Nick Fuentes. And basically he just gets a bunch of like bot retweets, like really a lot. He's the orange line there, and he's getting more retweets and such on like the first 30 minutes, etc. Even more than Elon Musk. It's pretty crazy. That's Musk's platform. And essentially a lot of these, platforms are going to be these kind of things. And if you ever went on Musk's platform, you'll figure it out very quickly. It's like, why is there Trump lover 45 and Trump lover 47 and Trump forever patriot 56, and like a bunch of these accounts named that way. And if you look at the account, it's just like nonstop retweeting of just nonsense kind of stuff like that. And sometimes they'll all have the same messages, which I've showed you guys before. It's a bot, right? The same way. And I do YouTube every day. You'll see bots and comments. You'll know it when you see it. And the other thing that's disturbing about this whole thing is you saw a lot of activity basically after Charlie Kirk's death. And there's an interesting chart here. This whole thing is absolutely crazy. It just kind of shows the timeline of said thing and how suddenly Nick is getting boosted by the bots. That's basically what it boils down to. There's also some disturbing things as well, is like the portrayal of how he's portrayed in the media. Like they use different photos of him now to make him look more like a normal person. Because I actually didn't really know who this person was. I don't follow this stuff. I recognize one of the photos here when he's in the red hat. I actually had seen that before. Okay, I seen that guy before. I know he's crazy. But then he started like, you know, they're starting to change the image of him to make him more, you know, appealing, I guess. Let me read some of the details of this stuff. And I want you just to be thinking about when you're on social media, when you go to whatever homepage, whatever that algorithm is showing you, that's part of the manipulation. Because sometimes people say, Chris, I'm going to subscribe to you, but I haven't seen your video for a long time. You know, what's going on? And I always say the same thing. I don't have control of the algorithm. I don't, right? And it could be any number of things that the algorithm is, you know, pushing things that they think you're going to like, or pushing something that you watched, you know, previously, any number of ways, or any Elon Musk situation, you just don't know what's going on. That's what the EU is like asking about that stuff. Like, are people just paying to boost certain stuff? Because you can actually pay to boost posts, be it on YouTube or on Twitter. So let's read through some of the stuff together, some of the details. It says, algorithmic amplification far exceeds legitimate reach, okay? And talking about like, how did Fuentes get to be popular, essentially? And it matters because you can make anyone popular in this social media driven world. Fuentes received dramatically higher early retweet velocity.
I want to check in on Karoline Leavitt and a new major story about her being exposed, maybe for being a liar. That's not new, but about even her family. What? And I don't mean her husband, who's 32 years older than her. I don't mean that. I don't mean her baby, who is closer in age to her than her husband. I don't mean that. And I don't mean this either.
If I had one message tonight, you know, this is being covered like all over the world. This is crazy because I haven't made a speech in a little while. Isn't she great? Is Caroline great? You know, when she goes on television, Fox, like, I mean, they dominate. They dominate when she gets up there with that beautiful face and those lips that don't stop, up, like a little machine gun. She's got no...
I don't mean that. That's not the story that we're talking about. It's something different. I don't mean this. It's not the story.
We even brought our superstar today, Caroline.
Where's Caroline? Where's my superstar? She's become a star. She's a star.
When she gets up there with that beautiful face and those lips that don't stop, up, like a little machine gun.
That face and those lips, they move like a machine gun, right? It's that face, it's that brain, it's those lips, the way they move like she's a machine gun. Caroline, the Prime Minister would like you to work for him in Hungary.
I don't mean any of that. Okay. What I do mean is this. Mom of Karoline Leavitt's nephew speaks out after ICE release. So I already filled you in on the fact that Karoline Leavitt's nephew, her brother's son, has a mother. And that mother is someone who just got detained by ICE. And Leavitt did something so gross, which was to get the White House's official response to be like, we don't really know anything. We barely know this person, even though it's her nephew's mom. And you have, I'll show you the lawyer even alluding to the fact that maybe nephew's mom was targeted. This is someone who's been here since she was a kid. But first, you have her saying, I asked Caroline to be godmother over my only sister. I made a mistake there in trusting.
I got a Mazzaro knife, and what followed was an absolute fiasco.
This is horrific. Smoking gun images from the Epstein estate have just been released. We see Donald Trump with individuals who appear to be survivors of Epstein on airplanes, at parties. Let me just show you some of these smoking gun photos that were just released by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. You see Donald Trump and what appears to be a young lady over here, Donald Trump and very young girls over here. You see that their faces are redacted. Many believed to be Epstein survivors here. You see Trump condoms. This was in the Epstein estate. You see these rubber gloves that appear to be used for sexual purposes. Disgusting. You have jawbreaker gags over here, terms and conditions of the warranty for these gags that are part of these photos that include Trump and Epstein and other wealthy men that the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee just released. You have things called pussy pumps. You've got extreme restraints. And then more photos of Donald Trump, Epstein, and young girls, young ladies. Seems to be lots of underage people as well. It looks like they're young. The faces are redacted, so it's hard to see. Photos of Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein having meetings together at this time. Epstein was meeting with Bannon. Bannon was Donald Trump's top advisor at this time. And Bannon had said that what Epstein knew about Donald Trump is what he was most afraid about as Trump's top advisor. Here is a DOJ deputy chief, Joseph Schmidt. He was taped by O'Keefe. And here's what he said a few months back. Here, let's play this clip.
But those files do exist.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of pages of files. They'll redact every Republican or conservative person in those files, leave all the liberal, Democratic people in those files.
Did they visited that Maxwell person?
Yeah.
And also involved?
Got transferred to a minimum security.
Over the last several years to go after him, and this is their latest attempt. And they don't have a platform or a principle to defend on the Democrat Party side. So they put all their eggs in this basket. And that's why you hear endlessly about Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. Everything's about Epstein.
Really, MAGA Mike? You say he has nothing to do with it and nothing to hide? Okay, MAGA Mike. You think that we're stupid? These photos, by the way, that were released today by the House Oversight Committee, right? It follows the emails from the Epstein estate where we saw that Jeffrey Epstein and his brother were sending emails like this to each other with memes and photos of Donald Trump. Would you trust this man with your daughter? You have Mark Epstein